Hi, my name is Natalie and we're here at my property, the Rabbit Hole in Upper Hutt near Wellington, New Zealand. It's a 2-acre property and it's a reasonably rectangular shape coming down from the road and leading down to the Akataroa River. We are here at the lower garden at the moment, which is pretty much where gardening started on this property. When we arrived about 7 years ago, there was a small garden patch down here and there was a whole lot of paddock, pretty much sheep paddock. So we went about slowly converting it into a more permaculture based design, I would say. And when some of the criteria we had in mind when we decided to settle here were around water. They were around the aspect of the property and also keeping it to a manageable size. So the property has got actually 3 water sources. We've got a spring which supplies the house. We've got a creek down one side of the property behind us here, facing me, and then there's the river at the bottom. And together they provide a reasonably secure supply of water. We started by altering the flows of the water a little bit, trying to keep the water on the property for longer. So we added a pond and we added another water storage system at the top. But overall, we're pretty well supplied. The next thing we did after we arrived was plant the orchard, and we had some great plans about turning it into a real food forest, which is the area you see down there. The trees are about 7 years old now, and we planted pretty much all of them except for 1 apple and 2 plums. Yep. So the garden area was extended when we arrived, and completely against better knowledge, I went with a round mandala shape, which was it's not the most sensible thing to do, but had to do with the aesthetics I wanted. These beds were established in a sheet mulch manner originally, but we have since moved to a more biointensive method of looking after them. The soil here is quite variable actually. We have bits that are quite heavy clay, or used to be quite heavy clay, and we have bits that are more sort of old riverbed with lots of stones and sandy bits throughout. This area here, we've been working with the soil for the last 6 years now, applying loads of compost. It's all getting the carbon into the soil, that's our problem. The other thing about this garden, which was an interesting challenge when we started, is that there's no vehicle access to this area. So our challenge was to design everything to be obtained from the property. We've got this beautiful piece of bush here, and used to do a lot of pruning and putting it through the mulcher and just adding loads of chipped mulch to the beds to get the carbon content up. But just having enough manure and fertility was a challenge for a while. We have the chickens down here, we have compost heaps, there's heaps of grass, so we used to work a lot with composting grass and mulching with grass to get the nitrogen up. But then a couple of years ago a very fortunate incident occurred, which was that we have new neighbours move in who have horses down at the same level. So now we have a beautiful supply of horse manure appearing at the garden gate just about every day, which has helped incredibly with building up the soil fertility here. Right, so again, this is our orchard area here. The trees are mostly about 7 years old now. When we arrived here, there was a existing plum tree and an apple tree, but all these are new. Our big vision was to turn this area into a classical permaculture food forest. If I had known then what I know now, I would have gone about it in a different way. but there's always learning involved. So you might see when we planted all these trees, we planted them with a tree lucerne brother or sister next to them, and we started planting a bunch of berries and shrubs around the place. Since the orchard's been going through a bit of a progression, we've taken out a lot of the tegacestes and mulched them and fed them to the trees because they were starting to reach a size where they're shading out. Some of them still need to be done now. I guess the thing that I would do differently now is to do with the grass suppression. We didn't at the time mulch the entire area. Again, it had to do with the ability to bring materials down here. So we couldn't just dump truckloads of mulch into this area. But getting an understory established in this sort of pasture environment has been quite a challenge, and so we've got a little bit of both going on, but the trees are mostly doing well. Upper Hutt area with the soils we have here, we're finding that the peaches and nectarines are not liking the climate particularly much, but the apples and plums and the cherries, what else do we have? Pears, fig trees, they're all thriving. So you got to go with what works. This is our pond paddock, as we call it, inhabited by our Muscovy ducks over there. Behind it is the chicken area. We've got our citrus trees in the chicken area because chickens and citrus enjoy each other's company. We also have our compost bins in the chook area over there. If you can see that, the chickens just help with turning over the compost and picking out weed seeds, and we just tend to just throw everything in, and they work their way through it. Some interesting learnings as you go along. We love the idea of having the compost areas in the chicken run, but at first we put them a little bit too close to the fence, and it turned out it was a jumping board for the chickens to get a shortcut into the garden. You live, you learn, so now they're a little bit further away. The other paddocks here are used for sheep occasionally. We share, these neighbours have sheep and those neighbours have sheep. We currently don't run our own, but neighbours' sheep come in and help keep the grass down in there. With the property this size, a couple of acres, this lower area is about an acre of land. One of the challenges we found is it's really hard to get stock numbers right. We tend to have too much grass in spring and summer, but then not enough to sustain the sheep throughout the winter. So without adding in a lot of feed or dropping the numbers radically over the winter, it doesn't really quite work, but working in collaboration with the neighbours does, because between us we have a bit more land. We did have a pig in here for a while, a kuni pig, but that was a real challenge with keeping the fences intact. So at the moment the solution works best for us just to share the stock across the properties. My next project will be to fence off the orchard and have it grazed by ducks or geese, most likely. But again, it's all a work in progress. It's what we call the top garden, and between the lower garden and this area is a short but relatively steep path through the trees, which I just ran up and hence I'm a little bit out of breath. The reason why we put these, and these are only a year old, was really to adhere a bit more to the permaculture zoning. The lower garden there's a track in between, and it's a couple of minutes through the bush to get there, whereas this garden I can see from my kitchen window, and we have exactly 0 food miles. Well, it's more like maybe 5 meters from garden to table, and I really enjoy that aspect of it all. We tend to have the sort of leafy salad green things, herbs, etc. out here, just the sort of stuff you want to quickly reach out and grab and throw onto a plate. Soils up here are completely different to the lower area. It's very heavy clay base, and in order to get this started up here, we actually used the quick and dirty method and just brought in a whole heap of compost, which we can do up here because there's vehicle access.